You're probably staring at your old and crusty phone thinking, what do I upgrade to without spending £1,200 on the new 17 Pro Max? Is it the 15, is it the 13, the 16, or maybe it's this? Because the iPhone 14 might be the perfect iPhone to skip. You might be confused, but you also might already have this phone and you might be thinking, do I need to upgrade from this thing? Because the traffic cone is really tempting this year. By the way, welcome back to the Backmarket channel. Today I'm going to show you why the iPhone 14 just feels strange in 2026. Every year, you might expect the iPhone to barely change anything. After all, no one really upgrades every year. But when I say that they didn't upgrade anything, have a look at the iPhone 13 next to the iPhone 14. It looks the same. The bare minimum is to make the new phone at least a little bit faster, right? But they literally put this same processor in this new phone. Could you at least make it a tiny bit better? Oh wait, never mind. They put one extra GPU core. How the heck is that gonna help? Give you one more FPS in games? Before Apple comes knocking at my door, they added some emergency features like crash detection and emergency SOS via satellite, but unless you're planning to get into an accident, you would hope that you don't need those features? Surely then the battery must be a lot better on this phone, right? Apple says that you get an extra hour of video playback, and I'm already imagining all the crazy things I'm going to be doing with that extra hour. And by that I mean absolutely nothing. But hey, you do get a little bit more RAM, which is extremely useful considering that 6 is a bigger number than 4. Perhaps it could be useful for the new Apple Intelligence, which is not even coming to this phone, and I'm gonna get back to that. Although this phone isn't a complete waste of sand, because here's a list that I made of things that have improved. The list is so boring that I'm not even gonna read it. It's actually crazy that Apple even made this phone, because everything that's new could have been an email, or an update, or a DLC, an iPhone 13.5.1. I almost just called this a waste of sand twice in the video because that's what I put in the script, but it's not a complete waste because it serves a very good purpose of being a distraction. Let everyone else buy the iPhone 14, meanwhile, you go ahead and buy the iPhone 13 because it's the exact same phone. As you can see, the iPhone 14 in good condition can be found for around £260, whereas the iPhone 13 is £208. Of course, the prices can change, but that's £57 you could be saving, which could buy you a case or a screen protector or new socks or something. Because this has the same processor as the 13, technically it should last the same amount of time. But if Apple decides to be a bully, they will probably make it last another year for absolutely no reason. I also believe that they made this phone kinda mid on purpose to make the 14 Pro look good in comparison. Because instead of this ugly thing taking up your screen on the 14 Pro, you get a slightly less ugly thing that takes up slightly less of your screen. Although the dynamic island is pretty nice for stuff like timers and music. Obviously, I don't have to show you how good this is day-to-day life, how I survived with this phone, because obviously it's still more than good enough for many years to come. It's not even that old. But sometimes it gets boring looking at the same old thing, and sometimes the wallet just gets a little heavy and it makes you want to upgrade. Personally, if I was upgrading from an older iPhone, I wouldn't consider anything older than the 13, including the iPhone 13 mini, because that is just such a nice little sexy iPhone. But then every iPhone after that is just kind of pointless. The same thing every year until you get to the iPhone 17. So if I close my eyes, I can only see the 13 and the 17, nothing in between. But if you're going from the 14 to the 17, this is where it gets a little fun. Living with 60Hz is not the end of the world, but after years of using a 120Hz screen, this phone does feel a little sluggish and slow and old in comparison. And for the longest time, to get 120Hz, you needed a Pro model iPhone. But finally, they added 120Hz on the base iPhone 17, which is sick. But also, what the heck took them so long? Although, the other day I caught my friend using 60Hz on their base S25, which made me realize that some people don't even know what that is. And just thinking about that makes me pretty sad. Just looking side by side, the 14 versus the 17 on this website, because I don't have a budget for the 17, the bezels are much smaller and the notch is gone, and there are very obvious upgrades like faster processor, brighter screen, better cameras, but that's the boring stuff, you already knew that. However, it is a little bit annoying to use this as a modern phone because of this stupid little lightning port. Every charger by my bed is USB-C, and don't even ask why. I got like 4 or 5 cables. All my power banks have USB-C. My wireless mic or even my external SSD is once again USB-C. So I think you can kind of tell that the lightning port is kind of annoying these days. Luckily, this does have wireless charging, which is pretty slow, but if you're charging this before bed, it literally doesn't matter. But what does matter is the battery life. So I found this battery comparison video, and for some reason the iPhone 14 only had 86% battery health, whereas all the other phones had 100%. But what's up with that? How is that even fair? Anyway, after 6 hours, it looks like there's a massive difference, but that is because the battery is literally degraded on a 14. But if you look at the 13 versus the 17, there's only like a 15% difference. Of course, the newer phones are slightly more efficient, they have a slightly bigger battery, but it looks like the biggest gain actually comes from just having a good battery health. Luckily, my phone had 100% battery health, and on backmarket, there's literally an option to get a new battery, or you could just replace it really cheap, which could save you from buying a whole new phone. But maybe if something major is missing, then maybe you need an upgrade. Well, not really. Sure, the iPhone 14 does not have Apple Intelligence, but I think most people are not a big fan of it. And let's just say it's not very good. In fact, earlier this year, Google announced that Apple would be using Gemini models and cloud technology because it's the most capable foundation for Apple Foundation models. So even Apple admitted that their own AI is not very good. How reassuring. So for now, the fact that this is missing Apple Intelligence is not a big deal, because you wouldn't be using it anyway. And there's nothing stopping you from just using ChatGPT. And you could argue that there's a lot of camera stuff that's missing, and depending on the person, that could be an instant reason to upgrade. For example, with the iPhone 17, you get a 48 megapixel camera, which means that you can zoom in and still get pretty good pictures without having an actual zoom camera, or be able to take macro shots with the ultra-wide camera, or the fact that there's an actual dedicated camera button on the 17, which a lot of YouTubers actually find it pretty pointless. What you will care about though is the brightness, because even on a rainy day you will probably be using max brightness, whereas the 17 literally doubles the brightness. Again, for some people that could be an instant reason to upgrade. Not in the UK though, because the sun doesn't even exist. Although this phone is already 3 years old, technically 4 because it's using the same processor as the 13, it's still got at least 3 years of updates, and the newest one being the iOS 26 liquid glass. And I don't know about you, but that liquid glass is kind of cool, but it's also kind of strange because if you look at the notification panel, it's kind of all stretchy and feels a little laggy actually. And I feel like the cool glass effects are just there to drain more of your battery. If you think about it, if Apple makes all these cool animations more and more fancy every year, that's gonna use more resources and it's gonna drain the battery more, and it's gonna make the older phones look slower in comparison. It's already kind of noticeable now, and in the future, they're really gonna wanna make you upgrade once they add all this cool 8K ray tracing on your home screen. I definitely think that this is more of a forgotten iPhone. It's not that it's bad, it's just that it's really boring. So if you're coming from something older like the iPhone XR or the X or the 8, the 13 is actually the best upgrade that you can get if you want to save some money, unless you magically find a 14 for the same price. But if you're on like a iPhone 11 or newer, I would highly recommend just to jump straight to the iPhone 17, because that 120Hz is going to make most of that difference. And actually no one's stopping you from even getting that used, because that's going to save you a good chunk of money. And even the cheapest option gives you double the storage at 256. This year, Apple really cooked. So I hope this video helped, and if you want to purchase any of these iPhones, I'm going to leave a link down below. And I guess I'll see you in the next video.